Welcome, James Hodge, to one of the first virtual Sailing into Oblivion proper podcasts. Thank you for joining us, my friend.
Well, thanks for having me. This is cool. Like this is cool for me because for anybody that's watching this, I came to Jerome the same way you guys probably did, as a fan of the stuff he's done. Like I read his book, started listening to the podcast, and then I bought a Westsail 32 in part because of some of the good words you said about it. And that was like I had two boats on my list to decide between, that or a Contessa 32. I was like, because I
Yeah.
gotta have something I can cross an ocean on, even though I'm probably never gonna do that. Like, still, I was like, I need the boat that's that strong, and so I had to go with it, man. And now I have a boat to rebuild.
I know. Well, welcome to the family. You've literally bought yourself a doorstep to the entire planet. That's what I like to tell people who buy these, because literally you can go anywhere in that boat as long as you're ready to do it, it'll take
Yeah.
you there.
Well,
So very
like I was explaining to my youngest, I was like, yeah, like anywhere in the world where water reaches, we can get there. And he's like, that's crazy. So
Dude, I've met some West sailors that buy them, and their dreams are like, I want to go down to the islands south of Cape Horn. I want to go to the South Pacific for 3-5 years, something like that. And the cool thing is that it is really attainable. And it's
yeah.
funny that you said that about the Contessa 32, because you're a man of pretty large stature. The Contessa has like very little headroom, and it's
Well, I
a
know.
tiny boat.
But it does sail a little bit better to windward than a Westsail.
Oh, absolutely. It's described. John Kretschmer describes it as a very sea kindly boat. I've never
Yeah.
sailed on one. Have you?
I was on one. I was summer before last. I was on one for about 3 hours. Sails never even went up, and I was bummed out. But
Ah,
but like no, I just again, most of my knowledge about seaworthy boats comes from books and reading this. I've read all of Kretschmer stuff. I've read your stuff, like John Passmore, Christian Williams. Like I'm such a nerd for just sailing literature in general, and
me
I think
too.
that's
Me
kind of
too.
how the addiction starts. Like it really is. Like because you can only sail so often unless you live on the coast and already have a boat. But I ended up like I got a Catalina 25 just to really learn how to sail on it. And then I was like, yeah, but this thing, I'm not taking this thing offshore. I need a better boat. So very quickly the transition happened to now I have two boats.
Oh no, that can be a curse, man. That can actually turn into an addiction. I've known
Yeah.
plenty of people that start with one, they get the second, and then all of a sudden it's like they lose control, and then they have six, and none of
Well,
them
I
are
don't.
getting maintained, and it's like, oh no, what do I do? You just got to start selling them. It's like Facebook Marketplace, quick, get on
Yeah.
there.
Well, luckily my wife won't let me buy more
Good
boats.
man. You got good backup. That's always very important. Well, I'll tell you from my experience, the biggest part about the Westsail 32 and why I was aiming towards that one amongst a couple others was essentially the perfect storm. When I really got into the nitty gritty and heard both sides of that story
Yeah.
from not only, Sebastian Junger's recount of it, which I don't know, you got to take with a grain of salt, but also from the captain of that boat, his son wrote an account
Yeah.
of sort of his side of the story. And man, knowing that boat could just do all that without anybody on it and make it through the rest of that storm, I mean, it's amazing. And I was just, for me, it's always been, I want to go out there as safely as I can and then make sure it brings me back. And it seemed like the Westsail was definitely the best one for that.
I mean, especially within what a realist, like if you've got 400 grand to spend on a boat and equipment and all that kind of stuff, then you can maybe find a boat that's going to do even better than a Westsail. But for a reasonable price for an offshore boat, it's not, it's really, it's so like everyone that I've talked to about it is surprised at how reasonably priced it is when it comes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're older boats, but and I mean,
You
the
can,
prices vary. Like you were just on one that was probably pushing six
oh,
figures, like versus mine, which I bought needing to get refit that I bought for significantly less than that. So.
Yeah. Oh, hey, mine too. I mean, the one that I was on, which is they actually I've not rechristened it, but they essentially it was cast as a brand new boat back in like 2012 after so much work. I mean, they just
Right.
built the whole thing, rebuilt it all. And that one, I think when it first went on the market was somewhere around 160 grand. And my Westsail was 40. And most of the ones I see are between, if it's a complete boat and it has sails and the engine works, between 30 and maybe 55,000 or something. That's
Well,
usually what I was seeing.
I got super lucky with all right, I'll just go ahead and throw that. I got mine for 6. Plus, I got to pay about 4 to move it to the coast because the guy who had it before me and engine runs, rigging's good. I got a couple of tanks to replace, and I just got the sails refurbished. But the engine's in good shape. It was repowered in like 2000. And so still an old, like it's still not a new engine, but it's running, everything's running fine on the engine. All the
what kind of engine do you have in it?
Prima M50, a Perkins.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So
nice.
basically you have a 52, but it's the older version of the Perkins, right?
Yeah, it's a Perkins 4108, and I believe I don't even know how you would figure it out if you could find the serial numbers or whatever because it's so old. The guy that sold it to me said it was a 50 horsepower, and which is way more than a Westsail needs. I get to idle or I get to hull speed at about 1,000 RPMs or 1,100. And I can't even run it at the RPMs that it really wants to run at when it sounds like a freaking freight train down there. So I'd love to get one of those 38 horsepower betas, like the brand new ones. Oh man.
Eventually I'll repower it and that's what I'm going to go with. But I mean, I feel good about, especially, cause I've gone through the engine pretty much front to back and just checking everything there is really to check unless you're like a hardcore diesel professional, which I'm not. And
me neither.
I can't find anything in it that isn't service oriented to fix. So
nice. Well, and it's got to have some picadillos though, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
It's but I've got to get it into good enough shape that I can get it out and really learn the boat better, because as it stands right now, I've had a chance to take it out on Watauga Lake in Tennessee. For everybody listening, I bought a Westsail 32 at the top of a mountain in Tennessee. It was the strangest place in the world to find it. But it's just sitting there. And again, Watauga Lake is a beautiful lake for sailing. It is, but really you don't want anything bigger than, like a 27 really on that lake. I mean, there are people out there that have like 40-foot boats on it, which is crazy. But it's was way too much boat for that lake. But the previous owner, he had it on the coast forever, and then he would do the river chain down to the Gulf and then go over to the Bahamas and then bring it back up. And then I guess something like 10 years ago, he was too old to take it like out to the Bahamas, so he just had it moved to this lake. And then he passed away and his son sold it to me, he didn't have any use for it. So I got a crazy good deal. And even after paying to move it, I'm at like 25-30% of what most people are paying for them. So
wow, good for you, man. That's nice. And I mean, you haven't. I know that we are going to be yard mates pretty soon when you get it down to
neighbors,
South Carolina. Yeah, it's going to be cool. It's going to be a fun summer having two Westsails working on them. But you definitely have, in our previous talks, you've got a decent project list coming up, right?
I do, and there's certain things I'm trying to decide. I'm trying to decide whether or not I want to keep the teak cap rails or if I just want to glass over them.
Ooh, yeah.
Because there is, it's not bad, and the teak's not even in that bad a shape. It's not all bendy like you see on some of them by the time they actually rip it off. So the teak's not in the worst shape, but there are some places where water's getting in, and I want it to be as dry as I can get it. And so the internal debate about whether or not I'm going to glass them over and that would be the biggest project. I'm going to have to tackle. I'm redoing the standing rigging. I'm probably possibly gonna glass over the cap rails and the mast step. I'm gonna G10 it up build it up a little bit because it's got a little sag in it, not much, but
Yeah.
it's got just enough that I'm like, that's something to take care of while I've got the mast off. And and I'm rebuilding the bowsprit.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. Oh,
So
yeah. We talked about that.
yeah,
That's. I mean, that's a pretty serious
right,
list. I
yeah,
actually, I just heard from a girl, Leela, over in Shout Out. She'll definitely hear this, but she's over, I believe, in the United Kingdom somewhere, and she's got a Westsail. She's just hauled it out of the water, pulled the mast down, and she's got that sag as well. And I had it on Mighty Sparrow. I know Tiffany, she's a Westsail owner down in the Fort Pierce area. She had that as well. And it's just one of those things where
yeah,
if you, in my estimation, if you start to see the sag, just go for it. You gotta deal with it, or it's just gonna start rotting and
yeah.
spreading that rot.
And you think about 50 years of a mast
Mm-hmm.
standing up on, like, mine's a 75.
Exactly.
What year is Sparrow?
75.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean that's a lot of
They're
years
like
to have.
brothers.
They
Oh, it's
are, they
great.
are.
When we
But
get to the yard, we'll have to check our numbers and see how close they are from the factory.
I'm hull 401, I think, off the top of my head. Is it 401? I think it's 401
I
or
don't know what mine
481.
is. I
I don't
I
know.
can't
But yeah,
remember.
yeah. It's stamped on the back, whatever.
Mine
But
used to be stamped on the back, but they glassed over it.
really?
I had to go down inside of the when they did the one really nice thing the previous owner did was he had a professional paint job done to the outside of the hull,
Okay.
and they went and filled all that in and painted over it. And the Coast Guard demands that you have that hull number somewhere, and it's permanent. And so I went inside the lazarette with a Dremel, and I dremeled it all in there.
Nice,
I was like,
nice.
yeah, well, hopefully that'll do. I don't know.
Government invading you, telling you have to have proof of ownership.
Tell you what, it's my favorite mile marker on any of my trips is I believe it's 12 miles, and that's when I'm in international waters, 12 miles from the coast.
Oh, it's funny. As much as I like to rant and complain about that sort of stuff, I'm glad we have things like the Coast Guard
Oh
because
yeah,
there are too many dummies, including ourselves, that can get ourselves in trouble. And having somebody show up and just get you, and you don't get a bill for it, it's pretty nice.
it's dude, and it really is. I mean, having sailed as much as I have up and down the coast on various different boats, I mean, the network of everything from just you're always hearing the Coast Guard blasting stuff out. There's a problem here. Is anybody close? You just feel like there's this sort of safety net that goes offshore pretty darn far. And yeah, it definitely makes a sailor feel a little warm and fuzzy inside to know
I
that
mean,
that's
of
there.
course, you had to be the guy that was like, "No, I'm just gonna go where there's none of that, though. I'm
Yeah,
just gonna go. I'm gonna go spend nearly a year. Just no.
yeah.
There's no help. There's no. What's the point? I've been paying taxes my whole life, so I might as well get as far away from the
Yeah,
benefits of that
right.
as any human can get and still be on the planet."
See
Oh,
if
the
I can
other
get.
thing, I need you to do a new presentation, and your new presentation needs to be the Earth is not flat.
Oh,
Because you're one of the few people that can actually say, I proved it. I've got the mileage. I've got my logbook. I've got everything documenting how many miles I traveled when I did it. And if I went down, and if the world was flat and I actually went and sailed around Antarctica, it would have been double the mileage. And you can prove it. And in today's age, in
they.
2024, there are enough. You need to go to flat Earth conventions and just walk in and be like, "I
Oh
proved you guys are
God.
wrong. You guys are
I
all just
am
idiots.
not
Give
wasting
me,
my time doing
give me
that.
10 grand to give a speech."
I will say though, it's funny enough. There's some professor on YouTube, and years ago during the whole pandemic and stuff, just devouring YouTube content, and his whole thing was fighting back against flat earthers, and he was using all sorts of garbage. And I ended up actually writing into him, and I said, "Hey, listen, I have all this data from my trip going around the world, distances, times, blah, blah, blah." I was like, if you ever want to make one of these videos and collaborate with me on it, I was like, absolutely. But I never heard anything back. So
I mean, well, or you could sponsor another trip around the world by going to the flat earthers, being like, guys, I'm gonna prove it. You guys are gonna buy me Starlink. You guys are gonna pay for
Give me
everything
some
I
new
need. Yeah,
sails.
yeah. You guys are gonna throw me
Stock the
about
bar.
100 grand, and I'm gonna go prove that it's 80,000 miles around down there. And then when you get back, you can be like,
Oh,
well, it's
good.
science. Science. Thanks for the trip, though, guys.
I do remember a few little comment battles back when I first started doing TikTok videos, and when it was really small, and you just only get a few comments, so you toy around with it and stuff. But there was one where people kept asking, is the world flat and all that, and I explained how I tell that it's round, and that was that I can find a ship on the AIS that's 15, 16 miles away, and I can't see it from deck level. And then I climb up my little mast, and I get about 25 feet up there, and now I can see them because I can see just further past the curve of the Earth. And I was like, that's 100% proof to me. I mean, I don't see any, but all you hear back would be like, well, it's refracting the light,
Right.
and
Of course.
so.
But you should start volunteering to take flat earthers out so they can prove it. Like, no, I'm going to take you off 50 miles, and you're going to use your laser that you spent however much on, and then when it hits, like, just completely roll with their nonsense so that you can say, yeah, guys, I am willing to be proven wrong here. So I'm happy to take you guys out for 10 grand and you use your laser.
Yeah, I don't know. No offense to flat earthers. People have, they can believe whatever they want, but I can think of a lot of other people I'd rather invite aboard Mighty Sparrow for
That's
an
true.
ocean passage. You know what I mean? So anyway, well, yeah, I mean, you're back to sort of the projects list and stuff, man. I mean, the cap rail, that was a big issue on Sparrow for a while because it was leaking all over the place. Because just that old adhesive or
Yeah.
compound that they use ends up rotting away. And I found that finally, after 2 coats of 4,000, that 3M product, the UV one, that sealed that up finally. And I thought I was in that same mode of like, man, I should just glass over these. I have to say though, in my opinion, and only mine, when I see a Westsail that has a glass rail compared to a wood rail, the wood rail
not as
looks
pretty.
so good. Yeah, it looks
it
so
really
good.
does.
And it's a beast, man, to work on and to revarnish. I'm letting mine go gray to match my beard and stuff these days. So we'll see how that goes, because up until this, I've revarnished it, stripped it all the way down 3 times since I've owned it, and you got to take the stanchions off to do it proper. It is a serious job, so it'll be interesting to see what you end up going with.
Well, mine's already gray, so like,
Okay. What,
so
the
really,
beard or the cap rail?
well, both. So but yeah, and again, because I haven't had it out sailing enough that the rail's dipping in the water, I don't know how much water comes in then. But even just when it rains, there's a couple of spots where after 2 days of rain, I'm filling up about a quarter of a gallon Tupperware thing that catches it.
Oh, okay.
And so I mean, that alone, like, I want it to be dry enough that at least in that situation, I know you're never going to get a boat all the way dry. It's never going to happen.
No,
So
that
but
really nice one. That one was a wet boat. We found areas that water was getting in behind the seams, and you'd open up a cabinet and everything's got water on it, and you're like,
yeah.
ugh, what the heck?
Well, they should call and ask for some of their money back.
No, hey, well, no, it just goes to show that, yeah, no matter how
Yeah.
nice the boat is, you're gonna have water intrusion is just sort of a fact of life. But the biggest thing is trying to isolate the areas. I used to have on that trip around the world, man, for the first month or so, bashing through the North Atlantic. I was chasing down leaks left, right, and center, and by the time I got back and hauled the boat out, hauled everything out of the forepeak, there was actually probably about half a cup of crystallized salt from just constant salt water for 9 months, getting in there, and then finally just solidifying. I should have kept it, but I was just like,
yeah.
I was like, get this out of here, wash it off. So what are you gonna do? Wow.
Well, all right. So what is your next big trip as of right now? Like, what are you thinking you're going to do now? Are you going to try the figure eight again? Or are you like, what's your big next plan?
Right now, it's all in the sort of idea zone where we're spitballing some stuff. I'm trying to finally change my normal game of I'm gonna go make some money for 9 months and then I'm gonna spend it all on the boat, go out into the ocean, break the boat because I'm underfunded and I didn't get all the stuff I needed, and then return kind of broken, busted again. I've done that now 3 times, and it's one of those things where I just can't keep doing it. I'm getting too old to have more like kind of unsuccessful and underfunded trips. Now,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had some luck as far as upping the financial game a bit, but I know that a trip, if I'm going to do, let's say, the figure eight through the North and South Atlantic, that's going to cost somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 because I need new sails. The sails is already 10 grand right there, so
Yeah.
that's the huge chunk of it. But I'd like to also be able to add not just me going out and sailing, but something where I'm doing the data collection. Because for years, I've watched Matt Rutherford through the Ocean Research Project, and his podcast, Single-Handed Sailing, is great. I've watched him go out and do these data collection trips. He's about to do another one pretty soon. And I was always kind of jealous of that and be like, man, you can sort of add this element to these adventures. And we had talked briefly a few times about the South Atlantic garbage patch, and it's never really been fully surveyed. It's a really isolated ocean in our sort of planet. The Indian Ocean hasn't been surveyed either, but it's got India there, it's got Southeast Asia, it's got Eastern Africa. I mean, there's a lot of stuff flowing into that, so it's going to be filled. The South Atlantic, though, doesn't have a huge population around it, so it's kind of one of those where I thought, that'd be like the last bastion of a clean ocean. And I know it's not because I sailed through the garbage patch on my trip around the world. So what we're thinking, and we're spitballing these ideas, and I'm working not only with Matt on this and then also with some of the guys at North Sails to try and do sort of a recreation of that figure eight. Not going to leave for Maine this time though, because the boat's down in the Cape Hatteras area. Because of that hurricane season and then the autumnal gale season are right next to each other. I just don't want a chance taking off from that far north again. But essentially, leave from Hatteras, head out. You got to get pretty much across the Atlantic, go down, cross the equator, the doldrums, be able to skirt your way along the South American coast, and then you can hit the westerlies. And the area of that South Atlantic garbage patch is kind of smack dab in the middle. It's around 25, 30 degrees south latitude, and it's in an area called the South Atlantic High, which is kind of very similar to the Azores High or the Bermuda High, these areas of light winds, kind of stuck in the center, but that's where I ran into most of the garbage.
Yeah.
So I'd have to spend about 2 or more months crisscrossing around in these light winds, tracking the data and towing these little nets and things like that, picking up all the data from and trying to find the concentration of the plastic and how bad it is, take the samples, and then go north, back up around, and hopefully, because something I've always wanted to do is stop at St. Helena, stop at Ascension Island, and then do a couple flybys in the Caribbean, and then back home. So it's, all said and done, it's probably 15,000 miles and maybe 5-6 months to be out there. So I get my little solo adventure and all that, but also be able to do something good for, I guess, the whole world. Really is more data collection on how severe the problem is with plastics. And it would, if I have teams working with me like North Sails or the Ocean Research Project, that'll help, because then I could get something like Starlink and have that on the boat and kind of do uploads and things like that. So that's the dream at this point. And essentially, if all the stars align and everything goes okay and we're able to make something work, then it would be essentially taking off at the end of October, beginning of November of this year, and then returning sometime around like April.
I mean that the only thing I ask is if you're not gonna have Starlink, is you stop along the way so you can, upload videos and some podcast episodes because I think with your personality, it's charming to watch you on your boat. Like it's fun because you have
Oh,
such a good
why, thank
attitude.
you,
I
sir.
mean, like it really is. It's like there's a there for I think the most important thing for people that are creating sailing content or really anything, it was when it can be aspirational. And like your trip around the world is so big, was so big that of course we want to read the book about it. But like sitting down, like there's no way to, unless you're doing like a multi-documentary, like a series, like a 10-hour documentary series. It's
Yeah.
hard to really capture as much as I liked Rutherford's movie where he sailed around the north and south. Like it was
Oh, red
great,
dot on
but
the
yeah,
ocean.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it was so compact, like for the amount of time he was actually out there, that it was hard to absorb it. But if you can really document that in segments and sections, and as you're putting it up, people will love that. I think people will really come to that, especially because you're doing it for an incredibly good reason, or you found a good reason to do what you wanted to do anyways. Like
Yeah,
that's
I got a good side reason. The
yeah,
rest
yeah,
is
yeah,
just
yeah.
me. I
I'm
just
saving
want to
the
go
planet
sail.
here. Yeah, yeah, sorry, Mom. I'm not getting a real job yet. I'm saving the planet.
Yeah, right. Oh man.
Send more money.
Well, it is, yeah, and I think there is something to be said about being able to do that stuff in real time
Mhm.
when you're getting that update and it's that day because I've got called out quite a few times and I try and relay to people that I don't have this sort of capability on my boat, but
Right.
they'll be like, dude, this was from like a year ago. Why are you putting this? And I'm like, well, because I was out at sea, man, for those 9 months and I don't have Starlink. To be honest, I had to battle mentally trying to figure out whether or not I want to let the devil onto the boat and have that sort of connection with the world. Because one of the nice parts for me is through experience, I know how good it feels to be disconnected permanently while you're out at sea. And it changes how your brain thinks. It changes everything, but you need that you need that no content rushing in at you for a set amount of time, and then your brain just slows down and it's awesome. It really feels good.
But you can also, in that, you can shut it down for a week
Oh
and then
yeah.
take a day. It's a, and like, I don't know. You're bringing people to sailing through the things that you've done. Like I hope you get that, right? Like there are people out there that are coming to sailing because of guys like you and guys like Sam Holmes and those guys. Like people are getting into this sport, which is at this point, should there more people, like it's amazing to be out in the Atlantic. I mean, the best I've done is 48 hours offshore, but that's an amazing experience that more
Yeah, it
people should
is.
have. And guys like you are inspiring people to do that. And so anything more you can add to it is just going to be that much better.
Well, and that's kind of, and I appreciate you saying that because that, one of the big things that I went back and forth with after the trip around the world was whether or not to upload any of that stuff like onto YouTube or whatever. And, at the end, I just said, well, if I'm not sharing, I'm just sharing my experience and it might tip somebody in the right direction to just get off their butt and go for it, then it's all worth it. And if I only get one person to do that, then great. Because I really didn't. I've always felt like I'm walking a fine line between sharing and being like, look at me,
Right,
look what I
right.
can do, wow, And I don't want that. So I definitely appreciate what you're saying, and it makes me want to continue doing it. And I will say on the boat, the way I rationalized having Starlink on there or making that decision for the future is that, as long as I can control myself and only upload and create and not consume any of it, then, that might be okay. But that's like, sitting a bottle of whiskey down next to an alcoholic and being like, You can look at it, just don't touch.
Yeah, but if you're sitting in the doldrums for 2 weeks, I don't think it's terrible that after 11 days you watch a movie on Netflix. Like,
No,
come
you
on.
can't do that. You can't do it. It takes you, it pulls you out, but that's
But
only me. I think part of it is that
it's a new experience that you haven't had yet. So now, see, this is just a different form of adventure.
well, that's true.
I'm just
That's
gonna be the
true.
devil on your shoulder that's like,
No,
no,
I
tweet,
need that.
tweet,
Yeah, right. Oh, geez.
feed
Well,
the algorithm, Jerome, feed it.
it's the eyes. There's something about it, and maybe I'm just weird, but there's something so enjoyable about getting into the mode where you're as excited to open up a book under a tiny little headlamp and all that in your bunk as you would be of like picking up your phone after a week of not looking at any social media. And you know how good that feels. It's like, oh, I've missed out on so much. Well, you got this book and you're reading and your brain is thinking, I don't know, there's something so nice about it, but call me old fashioned, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, well, one of the big things, like, it's like in the year 2024, the world's, I mean, for the lack of a better word, I mean, this is high praise, but you're our Bernard Morticia. You're like you and Rutherford and the things that you guys have done, because you're not doing these races. Like, you didn't do a race around the world where you were back in 60 days. Like, you went out
No.
and you weren't like so I feel like the stuff that you're doing and the stuff that other guys, ocean crossing sailors, are doing right now, somebody's got to be bringing these stories back. And you wrote a book, and your book is great, but I'm sorry, if Bernard Morticia was alive today, he would be posting on YouTube.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt.
So,
No doubt.
I mean,
He actually mentioned a little bit about that because he did eventually get a some sort of film recorder, and he had wished he had more of that because he would have liked to have shared it with the world and all that sort of stuff. You know, interestingly enough, in the long way, in the very end of that book, when he finally reaches Tahiti after 300 something days, he goes on a little tirade about like technology and the progression of the future. And he literally, this is back in 1969, I believe, he says that someday everybody's going to have a little device in their hand that they can then go ahead and talk to everybody else on the planet with, and it's not going to be a good thing. And it's like, oh, he called out the cell phone already.
I mean, people are always afraid of the future. Like, last night, my wife, she works in tech and in development, and so a lot of the platforms and companies that she works with, they're starting to bring in ChatGPT and different AI forms. And my brain, which is similar to yours, like, my brain initially is like, oh, all the ways that's going to be dangerous. It's like, oh, do we really need these people make it? And of course, so my default reaction is always to be like, oh, new technology is bad. But at the same time, man, I love an iPhone. I do. It's
pretty helpful. Pretty helpful.
It really is. It's amazing. We have a thing in our pocket that knows basically somewhat of an answer to every question that doesn't involve philosophy. It's
true. It's true. Well, and it's kind of funny. I think of it, from like a safety standpoint, it's awesome. Think about going on a road trip. It makes it very easy to navigate. You're not going to get lost. If you do get lost, you can get back. You can call for help, all that sort of stuff. Funny thing, though, I remember doing a road trip with my sister-in-law, Ina, guest of the show way back in the day, and she had never used an atlas for like a road map. And we were going from South Carolina to Michigan. And when I picked her up at the airport, I was like, guess what? We're going to try something new. I was like, phones off. You're the navigator. I'm going to drive. And here's your atlas. And literally, she just looked at me like, what? Are you kidding me? And couple
safer,
little
right? Holding up a giant map while you're going 70
me.
miles an hour down the interstate. That's so much safer than
she's
GPS
the navigator. That's the thing. I'm driving, she navigates, and after a couple of bumps here and there, and going through a couple of cities with some construction, she literally was having so much fun pulling that atlas out and being like, oh, okay, we're coming up to Detroit. Let's see if we can find this route and da da da. And I was like, see, that's the snap. You just don't get that. If the phone gives you the answer, you never get to experience the actual fun of learning and utilizing this ancient technology.
And that's like, I mean, I grew up obviously with maps because I think you and I are about the same age. You might be like a year younger than me. How old are you?
45.
Oh, no, we're the same age. Okay.
Oh,
So,
nice.
class of 96.
Class of 97.
Baby. But yeah, so like my dad was a truck driver. I grew up with the big road atlases and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I came to sailing, like navionics and all that kind of stuff were there. So I just use them. And
Right.
so, but I mean, I also, anytime I'm someplace new, it's let's get the paper chart. Let's go through and make sure we got it all. One of the place that I'm going to long-term keep the boat, in the Albemarle Sound, if you don't zoom in on navionics, you don't see the power line that goes all the way across the Albemarle Sound, but you see it on a paper chart. So when you're out in the water, you'll probably see the power line. But if you don't go over the center section of it, there are parts on the sides that are under 50 feet.
Yeah. Well, and that rings true. The old saying of, you never want to just use one aid to navigation.
Right.
They even say that on a lot of the charts and stuff. And you want the paper chart, you want the navionics, you want the GPS plotter, all that sort of stuff, because they're just layers of defense.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things that some people don't really understand about the world of sailing and yachting is that, when things go really wrong, your boat sinks and you quite possibly die. It's not like you get a flat tire and you pull off the side of the road. Like if stuff really hits the fan, you're going down and you lose everything. And so
people die in cars too, Jerome.
I know they do. I know, but not for, navigation, mistake. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I guess they do. They do.
They totally do. Like people trust their GPS and drive off bridges, man. Like
it's true. People always love to point that out to me when I do presentations and stuff. In the end, we usually do a Q&A and all that, and somebody inevitably would be like, "Hey, you realize that statistically it was more dangerous for you to drive to this presentation than it was to sail around the world?" And I'm like, you got me there for sure.
Well, I don't know. I would guess. Let's see. How many people have attempted? Do you know how many people have actually attempted a nonstop circumnavigation?
Oh, thousands, tens of thousands, probably.
Oh, it can't be tens of that. Can't be tens of that.
Oh, yeah. People.
Not at this point.
It's one of those dreams that people. Every single year, there's people
have Navi, but a nonstop circumnavigation. Is it? You really think it's 10,000?
People have been attempting it since 1969, and literally every year there's more and more people that attempt it, and most of them don't make it very far at all before they come right back.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I know. I wouldn't call them out by their names or anything, but yeah, I know of probably at least off the top of my head, like 10 or 15 just over the last, decade. And there's probably so many more because it's such a, I don't know, enthralling sort of challenge and dream for anybody who's on a sailboat. I challenge any sailor not to at least think about it for a second of like, ooh, could I make it around the entire world?
I'm pretty sure rounding Cape Horn is more dangerous than driving to a presentation. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Who knows?
Maybe that's me over romanticizing the dangers of the Southern Ocean. But I've never been in a car where like I was at least on multiple occasions being like, oh, we almost went over that time.
Yeah. I've had a few close calls in cars in northern Michigan in the wintertime, skidding out at high speed and stuff. But, cars are just such an amazing thing, though, because you're driving so fast and you are so close to opposing traffic. And the only barrier is a little yellow line. And I know there's been actually books written on like the mindset of people in traffic and how it all works and why it works. Because really, it shouldn't. It should be such mad chaos out there on roads with people. Everybody's got their own attitude, their own opinion, and da-da-da. But boy, I think it's the fear of death that keeps people in line on a road?
Nope. It's we're way more sheep than we admit. Like, and
Oh, do tell.
human beings are willing to stay in line way more than most people want to admit. I think that's what it is. I think it has more to,
Herd
because
mentality.
people are so unfocused when driving that they're only probably using 60% of their what they would do just to walk down the street. I mean,
Yeah.
how focused are you when you drive? I mean, you're focused, but you're not
Well, I'm
locked in.
if I'm
It's
in
almost like
heavy
a hypnosis
traffic,
state.
the only caveat I have is that since becoming a motorcycle rider, that changed how I drove cars like immediately because I just became so much more aware. But
the
you know,
focus on your motorcycle is so much different than in a car, even after
it
you started
transfers
riding.
right over though. For me at least.
Because
I mean,
I ride, and I still drive like I drive. I mean, I'm more cautious. I'm more cautious of motorcycles just because I've having been cut off and have those experiences where somebody was on their phone and just comes merging over, and I'm just sitting there.
Yeah.
Again, so I am more cautious in that way, but it's still that mindset you get into when you're just driving on the interstate for 5 hours. I mean, you're basically 80% asleep.
I'm gonna say just from my own experience, and I believe in what you say that the vast majority of people are definitely. But I just got off of a 2-day road trip, 20 hours or something, and I don't know. I am hyper focused because I just know how fast that can all go wrong, and it just and I feel very cooped up when I'm in a car because you have all these blind spots that you don't have on a motorcycle. And so, when I switch lanes on a highway, I literally turn my blinker on and then I turn my head and look, check the mirror, and then I go. And
Next time you're on the interstate in the car as a passenger, pay attention to how really focused the driver actually is. And I think you're like, oh, James might have been right on that
like
one.
I said, hey, I believe you on that. I mean, most people text and drive, and I've never. That's one where if I'm in a car and I'm a passenger and the driver does that, I'll let him have it. I'm just like, dude, it's my life too, pal. Give me that phone. I'll rip it out of their hand and I'll read their text.
I don't give a shit.
Oh God Almighty! Don't tell people that.
I don't really. I mean, I have set my phone down in FaceTime. I try not to hold my phone up and actually.
Yes, please do. Good man. All right. Well, we've gone off the rails here a little, but I know you had some serious transportation woes, and this is definitely always a question for a lot of people. Is like, well, if I need to move a boat over the land, well, how does that all work? Can you go through some of the issues you had?
Okay. So first off, tracking down a boat mover that I didn't know how much. I didn't know pricing, any of this kind of stuff when I started looking into it. But I had heard a few good references over in where the boat is right now about a particular moving company. And I am not going to in any way disparage him. I'm not even going to mention the name of the company. But he had multiple instances where he had truck issues and had to cancel last minute the move. And he was a one-stop shop, so it was great. He came, he took the mast down himself because he had the crane. He has a crane built onto his truck, so he lowers the mast. He loads it, lowers the mast, does all of it, and then he'll even re-step your mast himself when he gets you to where he's delivering it. So I was like, that's the guy to go with, right?
Yeah.
But after multiple occasions of him having truck issues and not being able to do it, the guy that he was supposed to move the week before me, so actually like this week right now, and me, he put us in contact, and I got really lucky because that guy is a logistics specialist. And so he, in a matter of a couple hours, tracked down a moving company, a rigger, and a crane company to come out and get the mast down because his mast, there's no shrouds on it. It's just one of the big 800-pounders.
Yeah, freestanding.
Yeah. So he had to get a crane anyways for his, and so we're all gonna. But it ended up being a little bit more expensive, but at the same time, it's getting done, and it was stressful though because you're all set and ready. Like I went down, I took the bow pulpit off. I've got all the lines taped down and wrapped to the mast. So all the instructions they say when you're going to move it and all that. So I'm all set. And then he cancels, and then he's like, "It's going to be 3 months," and so we get rescheduled, and then cancels again, and it's very stressful. But the main thing I would suggest for anyone going into this is go into it with patience. Go into it with do a lot of research on the company that you're gonna work with, and understand that you're probably gonna be better off if you bring in a rigger if you need that. Like I guess if you moved Sparrow, you could just re-rig it yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can do quite a bit, but I would need the boatyard to, utilize their crane,
Right,
and have them hoist it, and then I'm up there, wrenching away. But most boatyards, like when I purchased Sparrow, we had to move it from this guy's backyard, 30 miles to a boatyard. And that was, I don't know, I think they charged me like 700, something like that. And then the boatyard puts the mast up while it's still on the rig. Then they throw it in the lift and they put it in the water. All said and told, for a 30-mile trip was just over $1,200, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And it depends. I know the transportation of a yacht depends on, is it multi-state? How many miles is it? All that sort of stuff. So,
well, I'm lucky because they're bringing mine down from the top of a mountain all the way to the coast of North Carolina, from Tennessee to the coast of Carolina. Mast down. I'm not putting the mast back up when it gets there because I got to redo all the wiring and the mast. I'm probably going to replace all the rigging. Not probably. I'm sure I'm going to replace all the rigging. So I'm not having the mast go right back up anyways because I got to do the bowsprit and all that stuff. So it's but yeah, all in all, it's a little over 4. And
okay.
Some people were quoting as much as 7,500. One guy was like 10 grand. I was like, what? So, but and so I pricing wise, but part of the reason why the price is as good as it is the guy that was supposed to be moved the week before me, that we're now tag teaming it together. So some of the expenses of bringing the rigger out, we're splitting in half. The crane fee, we're splitting in half. And because the truck is picking him up on the coast of North Carolina and bringing him to Watauga Lake, and then picking me up at Watauga Lake and bringing me back to Bellhaven, there's no deadhead miles either. So
gotcha.
So that also got cut out. So that was part of the reason why the price ended up being pretty reasonable. But
nice.
I also tend to try to get the most I can out of my dollars. So.
Yeah, hey, you have to. I mean, as a boat owner, bring out another 1,000 is a mantra we all have to live by. But if you can find a way to pinch the pennies here and there, it's definitely not a bad idea.
Yeah. I'm not gonna pinch pennies on rigging. I'm not gonna pinch pennies on So I got an Aries, but I got one of the old flip up ones. And the reason I got it, I really like the idea of being able to get it all the way out of the water. Plus, I got a really good price on it, and so I am sending it to Aries, and they're going to completely redo it, like top to bottom, completely rebuild it.
Really?
Right. And even with the price I paid for it, shipping it to them, having them rebuild it and ship it back is still half of what a brand new one costs. So.
Wow, we're gonna have to talk deets on that one, because Mongo only needs a few areas where the bushings need to be replaced and stuff. And they sent me, it was the coolest thing. I couldn't even believe this. I purchased mine in 2017, brand new, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, it was just a shade over $5,000, including all the taxes and the customs fees, duty, all that. And it was like 3-4 years later, after another 50,000-60,000 miles had gone by, and I needed to replace a few of the bushings. And essentially, I just wrote to the quick email, and I was like, hey, I've got a few of these things worn out. Can you let me know how much it costs? And he was like, don't worry about it. I'll send it to you right away. And I just get this little package, and it's got all the stuff. He didn't charge me a thing. Like, that company's awesome. Shout out to Aries.
Because I was emailing back and forth with them. For the full rebuild, they're basically charging $65 an hour. plus
hmm
whatever parts they need to add into it. And he said we always get it done within 2 days. So, 65, 18, 16 to 18 hours of labor. I mean,
Yeah.
plus I bought the thing for $1,000. So grand total, even with shipping, we're looking at around 3, and a new one, including the customs and everything, is almost 7 now. Even without customs or
Yeah.
anything, they're 6.
Hey, they're
Plus the
worth it. They're
shipping,
worth
plus
it.
they are. And so like I I'm g- the I want to. I don't know if I'm gonna get you to come offshore with me, but I'm definitely gonna get you to come spend a couple afternoons out in the bay where you're
Heck
teaching me how to
yeah,
use that thing.
for
Like,
sure.
what's
Well,
your
and
hourly rate?
that's the nice part about TJ's is that, and I guess, giving away where it is, but that's all right. TJ can always use the business. It's a great boatyard, but they have, they've got slips there. It's not very deep, but just outside of there, you've got some pretty good open sailing ground. I forget what the river is, like
The Pungo River.
the
Yes,
Pungo
Pungo
River.
River.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
that leads up to the Alligator if you're going north, and then down to the Noose and all the rest, and Pamlico if you're going south.
Right, right. I think the only drawback to being that far in, at least from my perspective, is that when I want to get back to the ocean, it's going to take me a couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those canals, and it's always slow. I mean, I somehow, and miraculously, because I was so exhausted after the last little trip from South Carolina up, I'd spent like 6 days offshore, kind of did an unusual route to get up there because I was testing the replacement equipment and all that stuff. But I was exhausted. They were playing these war games out in front of Beaufort, and so I had to avoid them. And then the winds picked up. I was real uncomfortable. I hadn't slept in like a day. And then I'm pulling in, and I have like miles and miles of canals to go just to get into like Oriental. And it took all day. I had somehow, though, hit the tide perfect. Speed over the ground the whole day was like 6.5, 7 knots. And I was just like, oh, thank goodness. But that's the one thing that's a drawback, though, as opposed to being up in Maine, is that, Maine, I freaking untie that line. I'm pretty much in the ocean in 12 hours. I'm in the Gulf of Maine at least, and ready to just see nothing but waves.
I'll tell you what, though, this fall, if a named storm makes landfall on the East Coast, you're going to be glad for your boat to be in Belhaven and not down in Beaufort, or, it is a massive difference how much those storms weaken just coming across the Outer Banks and through the Sound and making landfall. Because
it's true.
I mean, it's going from, a friend of mine growing up, his uncle, his beach house was in Surf City, North Carolina. And I mean, it just wiped out the entire island of houses, just gone. And then 50 miles inshore, trees are down and stuff. There's some damage, but the winds literally, you're almost cutting in half just from the time they hit the coast to the time they get up to Belhaven, and you can sail it. So,
yeah, no, it's true. It's true. I mean, and that's something that, back in the day, I was always going back to Maine, so I just didn't have to think about it. Now, I know they got hit by a pretty massive storm this last hurricane season. It wasn't crazy up there, but it was pretty bad. But yeah, as a sailor, as a boat owner now of an East Coast boat, that's like a big thing you have to think of. It's like, where are you going to keep your boat during the peak of that hurricane season?
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, this will be the second year mine will be sitting there in the Carolinas, which, it's right in the target zone, really.
Well, at this one, it's usually a pretty good stretch between years when one makes direct contact to the Carolinas. Florida gets hit about once a year.
Jinx us up so bad. Oh,
no.
Knock on
Man,
some
wood.
wood.
I am a North Carolina guy, man. I have been hitting hurricane parties since I was 14 years old, dude.
Okay, good man. Good man.
Hurricanes just don't scare me the way that they scare people. Like, you grew up, like, a blizzard scares me. No. The way a blizzard scares me, like, and you can go through a blizzard and you're like, I mean, it's cold, but it's fine.
Blizzard, dude.
That's
awesome.
The way, somebody in Kansas, they don't care about tornadoes. Like, if you live in California, you don't care about earthquakes. I live in North Carolina. I don't care about hurricanes. Bring it on. It's fine. We'll throw some extra
I'm terrified of all of those things. I live in total fear every day. I don't even want to leave the house. No, but it is. It is a question, and because I've often thought, like, boy, wouldn't it be great to find a permanent slip somewhere in like Florida, be close to the family, be able to at least enjoy the winter down there. But then, yeah, it's this like constant migration that has to happen, and I've
Yeah.
enjoyed doing that for sure. Because there were a few years where I just took the boat from Maine, brought it to South Carolina, and then at the end of that went back up, and that's not too bad, but sometimes it can. And as I get older and older, it's kind of like, dang it, dude, I got to move that boat again. And there really isn't like this perfect spot on the East Coast that's
I
like
mean,
totally safe,
not totally safe, but you can go Annapolis in Maryland, and
True.
the storm has to come across the entire Delmarva Peninsula, hit the Chesapeake Bay, and then cross over to Annapolis. You're pretty good. Like you're talking, you might be seeing some 75, 80 mile per hour winds. You may see some damage to the boat, but you're not going to get this absolute destruction that you would get sitting on the coast of Florida. Like,
This is true. Yeah.
Fort Pierce, St. John, like that whole, like all through that area. When hurricanes hit there, all the boats are gone. You just don't have a boat anymore.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Wilmington, North Carolina, or you're on the Outer Banks, or you're like in Charleston Harbor in South Carolina, you're pretty much your odds are a lot better, is all I'm saying. Obviously, boats in the Carolinas, they get taken down by storms too, but it's nothing like what you see. I mean, you see people, half the people don't even haul out when the storms are coming in because they're like, well, it's more likely to tip over than sink,
Right. Well,
and the tidal currents aren't as bad, especially when you're in, like when you're basically the Albemarle and Pamlico Sound are inland waters, really. And they're brackish, but they're pretty much, you don't get the tidal stuff. I personally would rather keep my boat in the Carolinas because I considered doing even up in the Chesapeake Bay, and I don't know. I think I feel better about here than anywhere else on the East Coast, other than like Maine, New Hampshire area, and then you have to go to Maine or New Hampshire, and it's like a degree up there. So fuck that too.
Hey, shout out to Maine and New Hampshire. I love those states. All right, they're great.
Every time they want to pay me, same thing with Northern Michigan where you live. Every time somebody offers me a check to come to Fargo, Sault Ste. Marie, New Hampshire, Maine, I show up every time. I have never turned down a paid gig in any of those places, but I ain't fucking living there, bro. It's not happening.
Oh man, well, okay, totally get that, and that's it makes sense. I don't know, it has been just sort of on my mind because you do kind of hope that, oh man, maybe there's just like that perfect little Garden of Eden that I can take the boat to and never have to worry about it. But in the end, it's a boat, so there's always going to be a little bit of risk, and as much as that might give you a little bit of anxiety, at the same time, it's part of the adventure. So,
well, maybe next winter, what you should do is sail it all the way up, come across the Great Lakes, do half the Great Loop. There you go. That could be your next big adventure because you're getting old now, Jerome. You're turning into an old man. Yeah, exactly. You just bring it across the Great Lakes, and you can just become one of those guys.
I have thought about that if it came to the time where I was like, I don't want to do any more of these big ocean trips, but I don't want to sell Sparrow. I always want to keep Sparrow until I die, kind of thing. I think having it up in Michigan would be pretty cool. And, you're only going to get to use it for 4 months out of the year. But still, fresh water, you could live on it in the marina up here, all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. It has crossed my mind. I just don't really think it'll ever happen. It's one of those pipe dreams,
Well, here's an idea for you just as a fun trip. Do the Great Loop trip, but do speaking engagements along it all the way around.
Oh God, I couldn't. Not on Sparrow, dude. That I'd love to do the speaking engagements without question. I just could not. I hate the intercoastal. It's because my boat is just for sailing free on an ocean, blue, nothing in the way, me down sleeping below, that sort of thing. The intercoastal, I'm hyper focused, like I'm on a motorcycle, and it's uncomfortable, and I'm sunburnt. And I'm like, I hate it. I hate it.
That's the other benefit of Carolina is you've got the Pamlico Sound and you've got the Albemarle Sound that are at their thinnest points are 15, 16 miles across, and then they go 80 miles long. So you can actually get out and sail, and it gets super choppy. Like the chop can get pretty rough. It can get gnarly, but it's no worse than the Chesapeake, and actually in some ways it's better than the Chesapeake because there's less fetch. So it's a fun place to sail, and then sort of feel like you're actually doing something and not have to be quite so paranoid. Except when you're coming up the ICW and you have to stay in the canals, and those ditches are
Adams Creek.
It's weird that those things exist.
I'm glad they do, because it is kind of nice to be able to worm your way kind of inland, so to speak. But yeah, it's just Westsail's not made for it, and it's just, I don't know. I've often thought about trying to figure out a way to hook up like a rocking chair that I can like recline into in the cockpit and still have full visual and have like an umbrella over my head and be able to sort of manipulate where I'm going, because I'm just standing there like I'm at the helm about ready to pull up to a dock, but I have to do it for like 25 hours, and I'm just like,
If you drop your Dodger, if you lower your Dodger, you still have to stand?
No, when I drop my Dodger, I see what you're saying. Not really, I guess. I have a big beanbag chair in the boat, so I usually sit on that, but yeah, I don't know. You got the pulpit up there. You gotta, and I'm always worried that I'm gonna run over either a buoy for a crab pot or something. So, and I don't have a depth sounder on the boat, so the whole time I'm just waiting till I feel a little bump.
So you need to learn to be a sailor, Jerome. Which you're an offshoresman. You need to become a sailor where you literally never get out of sight of land.
A coastal cruiser.
You would never not have a depth sounder. Like, it's just irresponsible.
No,
I understand you live in thousands of feet of water, but
you don't need a depth sounder on a boat. You should know where you are and how deep it is around you at all times.
Lead line and...
I did. I've had to use one of those before where I anchored. Well, hey, James, this has been phenomenal. We're over an hour now, and I do want to give you a chance, though, to just talk a little bit about your comedy and all the socials and all that sort of stuff. So please take a couple minutes, just plug anything and everything you want, man.
Look, if just Google James Hodge comedy, you'll find all of it. It's all right there. I'm not hard to find. What I want you guys to really be doing, though, is spread the word about what Jerome's doing. Like, share his stuff. Like, get it. Like, the reality is there's a lot of us out there that enjoy your content, but I don't think we're evangelical enough when it comes to spreading the word about the stuff that you're doing. Like, you should be up there with Sam Holmes in terms of the audience that you have. Like, you should be. Maybe you don't have a half naked girl in the boat with you, so you're not going to get millions of followers.
Yes, like, I know. I understand that. But there's limits.
You've sailed around the world now. Maybe now is time for you to bring in your bikini-clad co-star so that you can.
We tried to do that this year. I couldn't put the boat in because I couldn't get new sails. But
I'm just saying, it's like, do you want a free catamaran or not? That's all I'm saying.
Not if I have to do that. Oh, God. Well, I appreciate that, James, for sure. Well, and I hope to be able to do more of these, and hopefully, you and I will be able to sit down for a one-on-one in-person interview this summer when we're at the boatyard, because I really want to discuss a lot about the comedy and about being on stage, because that's something that I'm slowly progressing into, and it's one of those things where it's so fun to do. It's nerve-wracking as you lead up to a gig. When you're doing it, it's awesome. Afterwards, you feel like a king, and so it's this roller coaster of emotions that I love. And I'm telling a story that I've lived. You're up there with this material you've just created, and like, the people are either going to like it or they're not. And that's amazing.
It's pretty autobiographical. Like, stand-ups, it's not like I'm going up there solving all the world's problems or anything. Like, it's
true.
It's dick jokes about friends and family. It's not that complicated.
Well, I really look forward to a chance to get into some of that and have you back on the show, my friend.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later. This was fun.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
See ya.
Yeah.